Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the JKMRC Friday Seminar Series. On behalf of the University of Queensland and the Sustainable Minerals Institute, we would like to acknowledge the traditional owners and custodians of the land on which we meet today. We pay our respect to their ancestors, their descendants who continue cultural and spiritual connections with country, and we recognize their valuable contributions to Australia and the global society. Today, it's my great pleasure to welcome James. James Vaughan is one of us, part of UQ. James is a leader of the University of Queensland Hydrometallurgy Research Group, which brings teams together with curiosity and perspective to develop metallurgical processes while providing opportunities to master new skills. I think James deliberately decided to write a little about himself. Today he's going to talk about hydrometallurgical research commercialization. Please join me to welcome James.
Okay, thanks. It's a real pleasure to be here. Just want to check, do the people online here? Yeah, so it's good? Yeah, okay. I'm an associate professor here at the university in the School of Chemical Engineering, where the extractive metallurgy is taught to the undergraduate students as part of that degree. We've got the metallurgy major and the BEME with the field of study metallurgy, and SMI supports the process mineralogy and comminution course, which is one of the five courses in that offering. So today I'm here to share my experience in hydrometallurgy research commercialization, and I've just been appointed the affiliate of the Sustainable Minerals Institute in the Center for Environmental Responsibility in Mining and also the JKMRC. So we've had a number of collaborations over the year, and hoping to build those up as we go along. Oh, and just to say, our labs are out at Long Pocket campus, so tucked in between here and St. Lucia, and we have the pyrometallurgy and hydrometallurgy research groups are in the Banksia building on that campus. So if you haven't been there, you're welcome to come for a visit. So just start off just a little bit about my background, and so I'm Canadian originally, and studied there at metallurgy at McGill University. And then in the hydrometallurgy research group at University of British Columbia in Vancouver. And during that time, I was fortunate. We had a co-op program, so I was able to get a lot of student metallurgy experiences as I went along. And then also I had a brief stint at the Placer Dome Research Center in Vancouver, which is now Barrick. That brought me to 2009. BHP brought me to Australia to work at the Newcastle Technology Center, where they were doing lots of exciting hydromet research in around 2006, 2007. But they, unfortunately, in 2008, that closed down. But I was able to come up and start teaching hydrometallurgy at UQ after that. So that was great. And so since being at UQ in 2009, I've had the privilege and opportunity to try to innovate, and it's I guess it's personal interest, but I think UQ is a good place in supporting that innovation, creating change, and having that idea of research commercialization. So as we've already mentioned, we've got the hydrometallurgy research group, and it's kind of grown over the years, and it's a pretty active group. And I say curiosity and perspective. So trying to do innovative things, you always have to be curious, but at the same time, you want to have that perspective of what the status quo is, what you're up against, to try to really make sure that what you're doing, is giving an improvement. And of course, it's a place of learning and training. So, these activities create opportunities for students to take part and people to learn and building up people who are skilled in the area. So what's driving the research and development? I tried to summarize that here in the following points. In hydrometallurgy, we've cherry-picked all the nice deposits, I guess, and we're continuously decreasing ore grades and metal concentration grades. I got this historical document last week was sent to me from 1907, and they were talking about Queensland copper deposits, and they're saying 5% copper. We're down to 5% copper. That was stressful in the ore, this situation is getting really bad. That was in 1907 in Queensland. So we're a little bit beyond that now, and obviously that trend is continuing. Complexity. So I think as the grades for your main metal go down, you really need to be able to get more from the ore body, get different byproducts, new feed intermediates, and recycling materials. So definitely we've got a lot of like lithium-ion batteries coming into the country, really big ones with lots of metal in them. We've got all these solar panels. How do we recycle them? Maybe Australia it's hard with the logistics to justify big recycling centers. So can we integrate those into our primary production processes? In Australia, we've got lots of mature technologies, old refineries. So how do we increase the efficiency of these older plants and keep them competitive? Of course, health, safety, and environmental issues are continually evolving, and there's things we can do on the periphery, but there's some things we can do in the process actually to help out in that regard. Lowering process carbon footprint has become more and more important, and sometimes that means switching technologies. Finally, manufacturing high purity and functional metals, metal compounds. So just getting to the metal endpoint, maybe there's some smart things that can be done to pivot to different metal products, earlier in the process. So today, I'm just going to share with you a couple of slides for the first 2 points. If you're not familiar, you probably are already, but the nine levels of technology readiness, which we discussed, and then the 9 steps in bringing innovations to market. And then I'll follow that on with 9 examples of hydrometallurgy innovations that we've been working on over the years in the Hydrometallurgy Research Group. So in terms of technology readiness, I think I won't read through everything in a lot of detail, but the 9 is broken up into 3. The first being research, where you've got some basic principles and you've got a concept, and then you do some work to do a proof of concept. So in hydrometallurgy, that can be actually a pretty quick process. Actually, we can think of something, design a careful experiment, run it. So within a month or so, we could actually get to level 3 in some cases. The next step it takes a bit longer. It's a development step. So validating the technology and probably testing it at different conditions, and then moving towards demonstrating it in a relevant environment. There are, by the way, different versions of this, and so this is just one example of the way it's worded. And then finally, deployment. So we've got a prototype operating. Everything's kind of complete and qualified, and it's actually then proven kind of at scale in the relevant environment. That brings you to level 9. In terms of steps in bringing inventions to market, there's, again, variations of how this looks, but it's a general process itself, where it begins with the research at number 1. Then you disclose the invention at some point, usually under confidentiality. The disclosure is evaluated, just kind of a paper study to try to see if it's got legs and can go to the next step, at which point you might consider protecting the invention, so filing a provisional patent, which is not super onerous in Australia. And when you do file a provisional patent, you do get some kind of inherent protection. You get a year or so to work on it, and it stays confidential, and to be able to gather more examples. And then finally, after you've protected it, you'll start marketing the technology and trying to find someone who wants to work with you. So choosing a partner, maybe making a license agreement. And then once it is licensed, there's then an effort to commercialize the technology, so to get it out into the market. And finally, once you're successful, then that's bringing in some revenue and creating some benefit for society. So at UQ, we have UniQuest is the group that largely supports this. There's also JK Tech, who does it for as a business for themselves, from what I understand, but for as a UQ employee, the IP is kind of owned by the university, but then it's the university trusts UniQuest to kind of support the inventors through this kind of process. And UQ has a policy where the benefits from the invention at the end of the day are shared with the inventor, so which is a nice thing. So if you go to the website, this is just their website. If you're a researcher, you can press the button on the left. If you're industry or an investor, you can press the button on the right and find out more about that. So now we'll get into some of the projects. So I'll say a little bit about the technology, but just at a high level. But of course, I'm happy to discuss these all more. So one of the projects was, by demand, there was a company out by the airport that was actually disassembling computers, and they were taking the gold-rich electronic waste and filling up these buckets, and they ended up with a bunch of buckets, and estimated there was millions of dollars of gold actually in those buckets, and instead of kind of exporting them to a different country for a pretty reduced price, they came to UQ and said, how do we get the gold? So we worked with them. And we did some leaching scoping studies and from different kind of leaching approaches, but yeah, then we ended up favoring cyanide, but of course cyanide being deployed in a kind of small scale kind of recycling application is immediately a bit of a safety concern. So we designed an integrated leach electrowinning process with kind of what we call inherently safe design. So it's just no matter, even if the process is upset or something goes wrong, it's almost impossible to make HCN gas, which is the main concern about use of cyanide. So this was proven in it may be even level 3 or even level 4. We did actually do some continuous trials for a pretty extended period of time in the lab, and we got some selectivity in the leaching, some selectivity in the plating, and so we could take less than 1% gold and turn it into 80% gold. And the nice thing about having 80% gold is like immediately you can sell it to the mint and cash it in. So we evaluated this and how we go about it. We engaged with a number of Australian recyclers, but it never worked out. One issue is the market is small, so even if we were to collect all the e-waste in Brisbane, it's still only maybe not even $10 million a year. So just that exercise alone just makes it kind of economically challenging. So the opportunity would be to get something that goes global, but we just didn't quite work out how to do that. A similar kind of project we ran was around the automobile catalyst. When I first came to UQ, there was those guys going around sawing off your catalyst and making a fortune there, but they were also not recycling them in country. They were selling them to Belgium or the USA or I think Africa has a recycling process as well. So those people were kind of asking me, so how do we get the platinum? And so they provided a bunch of these samples, and we did a leaching trials, and we came up with a chloride leaching process where we're able to dissolve the platinum and palladium and then just cement it. And then we were able to, had a circular loop for the liquid going around, and we were able to get pretty good recoveries, and it was fairly efficient process. So again, it was one we validated in the lab. We started marketing, but again, it's pretty small local market. And then we engaged a little bit with some of the international people who are already doing different things, so they weren't super interested. So that one kind of fizzled out for now, but it's still a nice idea, I think. The third one is the synergistic hydropyromet copper process. So here we're seeing we're collaborating with the pyrometallurgy research group, understanding some of the challenges with smelting around lots of pyrite in there. There's overheating, the refractory bricks kind of wearing out faster than you want to. So the question was kind of how do you cool down the smelter without putting in like lots of just slag recycling and dead volume, So we came up with the concept of leaching copper. And so normally you leach and then you do solvent extraction and electrowinning, but we said, okay, we'll get rid of the solvent extraction and electrowinning. We'll just leach and precipitate copper hydroxide using calcium carbonate, which is kind of a low-cost reagent, and then you get this powder that you could then blend into a smelter feed to get extra copper through the smelter, recovered from leaching process, and cool it down. So that was the subject of an ARC linkage project, and a PhD student graduated having worked on that for a few years, and it was developed to a point with Xstrata and then Glencore. The fourth innovation was radionuclide separation. So this was part of the ARC research hub for Australian copper uranium. It was BHP and Oz Minerals was involved in that. And the challenge with South Australian copper is that there's some radioactive. Some of it has some radioactivity, which is then makes it not suitable for kind of export, and you do have to be more careful with the smelting process. So it's largely done at Olympic Dam on that site. So how do you separate the radionuclides is the challenge. So here we're trying to not leach copper, but we're trying to separate the radionuclides. So this graph, which is presented at the 2022 copper conference in Santiago, shows on the y-axis we've got the radioactivity of a copper concentrate in terms of the different radionuclides: uranium, thorium, lead-210, radium-226, polonium-210. If you contact that with sulfuric acid, which is the residue of the second bar there, you can see that the uranium and thorium can be leached out directly. However, the lead, radium, and polonium don't leach out in that process, so the radiation kind of still stays reasonably high. And so then we came up with a third step, which is a resin and pulp technique, which allows you to essentially suck off the lead and the radium, which are on the surface, and put them onto the resin beads, and then you can just do a physical separation and dramatically decrease the radioactivity of the concentrate. So the only remaining radionuclide of significance is polonium, which actually does decay if you leave it out, and also can be driven off with heat if you need to. So that technology is BHP has the right to use it, but it's a UQ. It's a UQ technology. So if you know someone else who wants to take up that kind of thing, let me know. A fifth innovation was around converting a low-cost feed like kaolin or leached spodumene and turning that into a high-quality zeolite product. So this was so Hong Peng is a senior researcher here who kind of led this project, and we came up with the technology, went through UniQuest, and came to an agreement with the company, who then rebranded as Zeotech, and we piloted this we built up to a continuous pilot at the Long Pocket facility for about 6 months. We produced 25 kilos of high purity zeolite from leached spodumene and clay starting materials, and demonstrated the technology. So it's so it's technically feasible, and it's still a potential pathway that could be brought to commercialization. Number 6 is refining of mixed nickel cobalt hydroxide precipitate. When I worked for BHP, Queensland Nickel was taking in mixed hydroxide from Ravensthorpe in WA. The conventional approach to refining mixed nickel cobalt hydroxide was to dissolve all the material either in ammonia or in acid solution, and then subject that liquid to various steps of solvent extraction to separate the cobalt from the nickel. The leaching step itself was a little bit difficult because depending if the particles were to age and oxidize, then they become more difficult to leach. And so you sometimes struggle to get high recovery in leaching, or it could be a longer process. And then you have to have this kind of solvent extraction separation comes with its own its own issues. So the innovation was to selectively leach the nickel and leave the cobalt and manganese and iron in the residue using a strongly oxidizing conditions. So that was licensed to Pure Battery Technologies, which is a UQ startup company, and the initial investor in that was a UQ Minerals Process Engineering alumni. So just in terms of sharing a little bit more about that journey, because this technology has now been implemented at scale. The invention occurred in 2009, 2010, TRLs 1 to 3. And then we had a long period of time where we tested samples here at UQ from all over the world and showed how the technology works. And so we're sitting around TRL 4 and 5 for a long time until we finally got the investment, which went to immediately to piloting and bringing it up through then in 2020, TRL 7 and 9. So the company was able to acquire this refinery in Germany, the K&E nickel refinery, and retrofit the technology into that site. So, so just some things are out of your control. You can have good ideas and you can do all the right things. And then, so here I'm just sharing the example of the nickel price, for example, and just tell a little story about how that affects things. So, so in 2006-ish, I was hired to come to Australia to work for BHP as a nickel process development technology, and that's when the price was ramping up. And then when the price came back down, the whole place shut down. So unemployed, about to be deported. But then UQ saved me. So I joined UQ, so I didn't have to be deported. And then being in the industry is quite helpful because you understand all the problems, and then being at the university is nice because then you can you do have some scope to try to fix the problem. So Will Hawker and myself invented this selective leaching process. We actually quickly got interest, and we had a first agreement signed not too long after that. But then the nickel price kind of slumped again, and so that kind of agreement fell through. And then things actually went quiet for a couple of years. It was really just on the back burner. But then in about 2014, 2015, there's all this electric vehicles were on the rise, and everyone realized that a lot of nickel and cobalt are required for the high-end batteries in the electric vehicles. So then there was renewed interest, and that's when the technology was licensed and brought towards commercialization. So the refinery that has the technology is actually planning to quadruple the capacity at the moment. It's feeding battery materials into the European market. Okay, so that was the only actual one that got all the way to 9. So innovation 7, per-crystallization. So this is a technology. It's a new method of crystallizing materials, which doesn't maybe happen that often. It was invented in about 2016 at UQ in the FIM lab group, so the Film and Inorganic Membrane group, led by Professor Joe DaCosta. But I was involved in that project, and basically it's a corrosion-resistant crystallizer where the reactor scale, which is an issue in corrosion, is actually the product. So it's kind of fun, and maybe some of you have seen this already, but this is a slightly sped up video of how it works. We've got liquid going through an inorganic membrane in a vacuum chamber. The crystallization is happening on the outer surface, and the particles are self-ejecting. So it's and you can see the particles kind of rapidly building up at the bottom of the vessel. So it's possible to run this in continuous operation, and it's a very highly productive reactor. So we've just received this. Julius Motuzos is the chief entrepreneur trying to take this forward. We've built, actually, since this particular crystallizer, we've got 2 scaled up versions, and now we have a fairly large one out at Banksia, which is set to give a reasonable production rates. The company Proxa is one of the leading crystallizer suppliers, and they're quite interested on finding out more on where this technology can fit in, and Worley's supporting this AEA project. So just in terms of productivity, so we've got solar evaporation, which can take months or years. We've got conventional evaporative crystallizers, which take kind of hours or days. And then we've got the per crystallizer, which is more like minutes. And then you can go all to the extreme. You can have spray drying technology, which is more like seconds, of course. But there's a question of what particle qualities you want and which one is most appropriate. So in the evaporative crystallizer, you get a big distribution. In the spray dryer, you get a very, very fine powder. The per crystallizer actually can give you some more flexibility in getting something in between and a bit homogeneous. So innovation number 8. So we've got the process for copper concentrates. So here with Lee is the director of the company, startup company Banksia, which just formed this February. We made the UQ News, and we've received some support from IP Group to help us through this early stage of commercialization, get the concept accelerated. So Lee's doing a very good job on commercialization side of things, and there's lots of pull, and we're working very hard in the lab with our current project, which is part of the Trailblazer project. And so we've made a breakthrough in how to convert copper concentrates into high purity copper metal using an integrated leach electrowinning approach. Okay, innovation number 9 is around tailings co-processing. So as you know, tailings are a big issue in Queensland with lots of historical sites. We've collaborated with SMI on the rare earth project, and we scoped out where do all the rare earths, or could they come from in Queensland, for example. And one of the most obvious places is the Mary Kathleen uranium tailings, which are sitting there all together. It's a state government liability at the moment. So we ran a conventional process to recover the rare earths from those tailings, and and it's marginal. It's possible that it could work using just conventional technologies, but the acid requirement is quite high, and if you can take down the acid requirement, then it all becomes more and more economically feasible. And at the same time, we have all these tailings around that can generate acid, so we've come up with a way of combining the two materials to make it so that no acid's required. And we think it looks pretty interesting. So we're, I guess, in the early stages of developing that. We've done a proof of concept. We're working with UniQuest to protect the IP at the moment. The PhD student there, Vitor, went to the innovation research battlefield and presented the concept, and he came runner-up in an innovation competition. So we're hoping to move forward with this one as we go along. So just some reflections on those experiences. So I guess it's just some important to be in touch with the R&D drivers and I guess the market more generally, and to understand where the real opportunities are. Committing to an opportunity is quite a bit of hard work over an extended period of time. So it's obviously rewarding when things work out. It's important to kind of be able to also recognize, I guess, when it isn't working out, so know when to hold them, know when to fold them. So engagement. So I guess, if you're a researcher and you just want to do your research and don't like talking to people in general, but when you go down this route, you have to engage quite a bit with investors, partners, and various other stakeholders, and that takes time, focus, and it's its own kind of skill set. Timing, as I guess showed with the nickel process technology, the invention can be quite sound, but then the timing for it to actually click, may require some other factor. Like in this case, it was in the nickel industry. Most of the industry is aligned to make nickel metal for the stainless steel market, and so that was a big change in the nickel market when more and more nickel was getting pulled over to make nickel for batteries, which requires a different kind of processing approach. So that was kind of a global kind of macro consideration that was happening that kind of tipped things in our favor. University applauds commercialization. We are create change is the motto, and then but you need to be able to still balance the commercialization activities with lots of other responsibilities as being part of UQ, so teaching, service, supervision. It's a team effort, and UniQuest is a key part of that. So I guess so we work closely with those people, but also as these projects progress, the team gets bigger and bigger, and there's students, there's researchers, there's research assistants, there's supporters and friends you find in industry who can help you out. There's your own supervisor and so on. So the team gets big, and you have to recognize that it's a lot of people involved. So I think on that note, I'll just wind up with an acknowledgement for this is a list of all the individuals at UniQuest over the years that have actually helped on the projects discussed today. And then we're also currently getting some good support from the Resource Technology and Critical Minerals Trailblazer, and part of that Trailblazer is around how to kind of support these research and commercialization activities. So I'm not sure if I went the whole time, but it'd be really great to just have some Q&A and discussions around that. That's okay.
Okay, thank you, James. Please join me. Andrew has his hand up already.
Hi, Andrew White. I work here in comms at SMI. My question is about how we've seen in a lot of talks here about how mining companies love to be the second in line, that after someone has already taken the gamble and it's paid off, then they're happy to jump on. What advice do you give to researchers in trying to pitch to companies or finding industry partners and convincing them that the risk profile is right for them at the time and in the future?
Yeah. So that's a really important point, and that's right. The big companies, I guess. So even coming from Canada, we used to have lots of research and development centers in the 1990s, for example, and then even as in the late 1990s, this kind of in-house R&D facilities have kind of basically, I think they went like east to west, and they closed down, and then when Canada finished closing them down, they kind of came to Australia and they closed it. So basically went like that. So those used to be the places, I think, where the big companies would actually come up with their own in-house innovation. And so now, and I guess the decision was made to, like you said, outsource that. So I think the big companies do keep an eye on what's going on, but they don't, they get in, they've got programs to kind of collaborate, I guess. So I guess, and it's important, so I think it's important to take part in those opportunities and work with the companies, especially if it's relevant. If they're the ultimate end user, then you need to kind of get their early feedback to help you drive that. But they may not necessarily, get right behind you initially. So then that's where kind of, I think UniQuest comes in, and when you work with them, UniQuest is constantly talks to various people across the industry, and they also talk to various investors. And so I think for early stage ideas, you do have to come across an investor actually who likes what you're doing and can see the value, and then they can kind of put some money into it, and then you can try to build things up, from the ground and get something more substantial behind it. And that at some point there's a tipping point where industry will take it and bring it in. So they need to be aware. All your efforts need to be highly aligned with the end user's requirement, and then this networking, communication, and some effort has to be put in to get through these TRLs, and at some point it'll become close enough to be acceptable, I believe.
Thanks, James. So the uranium guys are pretty good at in situ leach. Where do you think that's going to go anywhere with other metals for in situ treatment?
Sure. I mean, yeah. So in situ is great because we don't need all the mining people. I guess we can just, it's only hydromet. So that's fine. So it's interesting. So I mean, I think there's a lot of challenges with in situ leaching depending on there's the environmental challenge around making sure the liquids are not escaping into the environment. And then there's with the mineralogy itself, if there's gases that evolve, or if you need a continuous stream of oxidation underground, these are kind of technical challenges that probably need to be worked out in terms of how to do that efficiently. Yeah, so I think it's got a lot of potential upside. I think it's easiest for if it is a situation where it's a straight acid dissolution type of a reaction. That can be easier to manage. So it's worth continuing to kind of look into that carefully. But so with gold, for example, you got to have the oxidant in there. What kind of oxidant, if you are using cyanide, for example, what kind of oxidant do you have doesn't wear out in the first 5 seconds? Yeah, but it's not impossible. Yeah. Yeah, so there'll be more future applications. Yeah.
With traditional pyromet, one of the big problems sort of historically is airborne pollution around these smelters, and that's would seem to not be a problem with the kind of hydromet leaching processes you're talking about. Have you got, is it possible to do this sort of process with lead ores or other metals, or like other than copper that you're obviously concentrating here, or is it just an economics thing with it being like copper being 5 times more valuable than lead?
Yeah, it is possible to do it with the other commodities. So when one of my first jobs as an undergraduate student at the Noranda Technology Center in Canada, I was working with the Brunswick mines tailings, which have a sphalerite, so it's zinc iron sulfide. So it was just not good enough to go through the traditional zinc process. But we also had a chloride leaching approach to bring zinc into solution and then purify the solution, recover zinc intermediate, and then get like a high purity zinc oxide could be produced quite kind of efficiently in a sense. So yeah, so definitely, and with the copper technology, there's lots of opportunities around dirty concentrates that contain lead and zinc. So lead doesn't dissolve in sulfuric and sulfate-based solutions, but it is highly soluble in chlorides, and minerals oxidize in a series. So the more reactive ones go first and less reactive ones go second. In fact, copper's loves the sulfur the most. So you can have a solution with copper in it, and you can precipitate the copper out while you dissolve lead or zinc, and then so then the residue from that process can be an ideal feed for a hydro processing of a copper concentrate. Yeah.
So it sounds like this sort of process would be the ideal solution to Mount Isa when they bulldoze all of the infrastructure there to make the super pit, and you're dealing with dirty mixed partially oxidized ores that contain copper, lead and zinc and everything.
Yeah, that's right. I think there's a good opportunity for making a mixed bulk sulfide flotation concentrate from those tailings, which is not currently suitable for any conventional technologies, and really just saying, okay, well, how do we actually do that? Yeah, I think that's important to look into that. Yeah.
Thanks, James. What have your conversations been like with investors when you've advised them that it's best to fold up?
Sorry, when what? Sorry, I didn't get that.
What have your conversations been like with investors when you've advised them that it's probably best to sort of fold up the initiative in the project?
Well, I mean, I'm rarely the one who says that, because it's if it's up. Yeah, I guess the decision to fold it is based off of not partly not being able to secure investment. So it's having the conversations with the investors, understanding the feedback, and that being said, yeah, sometimes when you know the answer, then you don't want to also invest your time. And so with the gold one, we did a solid year of work to try to flesh out the opportunities. And then once I kind of knew the setbacks, we did have further engagement with investors where I kind of declared upfront where the setbacks were, and I asked that, I've kind of asked them, is there any way you see a way around this? And then if they don't have, then we just kind of call it there, I guess, yeah.
An online question.
So there are a number of them. There are 3 questions from Ian Dover. The first one is, great examples, James. Can I ask what percentage of your research is driven by industry challenges, and will this continue, increase or decrease? His second question is, how do you find a recent trend in universities to reduce mining and metallurgy teaching funding when it comes to finding people to help with the research? And the last one from him is, can you provide any insights into the views of the big miners with respect to reprocessing mine waste? Is it something that they are interested?
Okay, so let's just do it. Okay.
One by one.
3 good questions.
Okay.
So the first one I think is kind of easy. So what percentage of my work is industry? So I say 100%. Okay, so we've gotten funding from various sources. Like in the percrystallization process, for example, when they first went to patent it, that patent actually ended up falling over because they couldn't get sufficient industry pull at the time. So then I worked with them and we applied for another discovery project, and we said percrystallization in hydrometallurgy is the title. And then we said, okay, so now we've got something that's interesting, but let's spend some time, fundamentally thinking about how this can actually be applied. So even though it's a discovery grant, it's still got the industry focus on it. Yeah. So maybe we'll go to the second question.
So the second has to do with cutting universities' funding for met and mining teaching funding. How do you find people if there's a continuous decrease in such?
Yeah, it's been a little bit, as a metallurgical engineer, and so it's been a little bit painful, I guess, my career to see that, and in Canada, for example, I was the last class graduating in metallurgical engineering at McGill University, and then all the universities in Canada just kind of changed over to materials, and then in Australia, some of the metallurgies kind of disappeared in various places and then became this kind of part, just kind of a small part of the chemical engineer. I think that's just, I think we've kind of hit the bottom, and that probably, in my opinion, probably needs to turn around, and there has to be a little bit more focus in this area. So I'm working hard. I guess I'm pleased to say that we have, over the past few years, increased the number of students in our courses. So in our metal production and recycling course, in second year, we've gone from 18 students to 58 over the past 3 years. So the students seem to be more interested. I'm not sure if it's been in the media a little bit more, and so there's interest there. And so if for the industry people here, I just what that means is, yeah, there's more students interested. So so there's more need to kind of offer some opportunities around, summer students or supporting projects that can kind of get them that industry experience. I find that with the students, once they go work on site and come back, and there's the case for myself as well, then they know what they're doing, and there's no more wondering, So yeah, so those early industry experiences are really important, and yeah, and the program seems to be on the up at the moment. Yeah.
The last one from him is with regards to reprocessing mine waste. You think the miners are interested, or they don't want to take such risk in developing?
Well, I think they're always interested. I guess I'm familiar with we worked quite a while with Rio Tinto for and thinking about the residues, the bauxite residues, in particular for the Gladstone situation. There's a lot of sodalite, sodium aluminosilicates in those residues, and there's a lot of sodium hydroxide locked up in there, and it's an environmental liability. So yeah, so we have worked on technologies to recycle the sodium and the aluminum back to the Bayer refinery, and then once you do that, it opens up an opportunity to have like a high iron powder, which then should be able to make its way into the iron making stream. So I think yeah, companies are inherently interested, and the environmental liabilities associated with all that material is becoming huge. So if you take that into account properly, and then yeah, there should be some opportunities. But I guess there haven't been a lot of great examples of success, I suppose. So you know, and there's little things you can do that can be good, but then the little thing is not big enough to make a dent in the amount of material that you have. So yeah, so I think those are just good challenges to be thinking about the best practice for residues. Yeah.
Maybe I'll continue with more online question. Okay, so from Steve Micklewaite, he's asking, he says very impressive, James, and encouraging for the rest of us. Where's the majority of your investment coming from? The type of people, organizations, the geography? Is it onshore? Is it offshore?
Yeah, so I guess I should say, yes, with the 3 kind of startup companies we've had, they've all kind of came back to the university with large projects, I would say, and so I think there's over $10 million of research funding has come back from these startup companies. So I think that's a good payback in a sense. If you're getting a discovery grant's quite hard, and you know, the success rates are less than 20%, and then when you are successful, you only get $350,000 for 3 years, so that's only $100,000 a year, and then so that's like a PhD student stipend and a little bit. Like, so it, you know, in terms of, you know, actually getting activity up, then yeah, I think getting industry is key. I think there's a lot of programs now from the government which kind of supporting more and more, you know, projects that can come to universities with an industry partner. So and those projects can typically be you know, be more funding involved in that. So yeah, Rio Tinto was supported us well for 5 years with we had a bauxite and alumina technology center to deal with the challenges of the Cape York bauxite and the impurities there, and so we did a series of projects with them over 5-6 years, and you know, that was a really great you know, industry engagement. Yeah.
So this, I think, is similar to a question that was asked in the room. At what stage of the project do you think is best to pause and conduct a techno-economic analysis? And do you think that will be sufficient to decide whether to continue or terminate the project?
Yeah, I mean, I think you need to be doing that like just at a high level, like right away, like immediately, like even before doing the proof of concept, you just do you just kind of at a high level just say, you know, you can always just say, you know, how many reagents does it require, and what's the cost of that, what's the value of the metal, and you just like continuously doing those types of calculations, which help you say, it's kind of like doing a chemical thermodynamic calculation for your reaction. You got a reaction, is it going forward or not? So you can just calculate it first, right? You don't need to, and it's like, yes, it's favorable, no, it's not favorable. So I think same thing with the economics, is just do something really high level. It's like, oh, immediately this doesn't make sense. Okay, so how do I make it make sense? And then you focus on that. Yeah. And once you do that calculation, that tells you what the issue is, and then you kind of readjust your thinking to deal with the issue.
So from Ibak Shaku, could you please share insights on the current status of implementation of your research outcomes in the industry, particularly regarding pilot scale verifications and full scale deployments? And the second one is the key challenges you encounter in bridging the gap between academic research and industrial application.
Yeah, so yeah, basically I summarized not everything we've done, but a lot of what we've done in this presentation. So the nickel technology is the only one that's been implemented. A version of some of the things we helped out with Rio Tinto been implemented in the alumina industry. The zeolite technology is kind of been advanced quite a bit and could be applied at some point. And there's other versions of what we started there that have also been developed internally in the company. And then we're working hard on the copper one right now. So we've scaled up. So we've just scaled up our copper recovery reactor to a 1 meter height, which is anticipated to be consistent with the industry application. So we're working hard in the next year to try to get that accelerated.
Sorry,
Yeah,
more online
no problem.
questions for you.
Yeah,
So
second
one
part.
from Tim Napier Moon. Thanks for a very interesting talk, James, and thanks for being honest about the failure rate in terms of full commercialization. I think 1 out of 9 case studies has ended up being fully commercialized in Germany, despite successes in the lab. Is that the usual going rate? 1 out of 9?
Yeah, I guess underneath that, there's probably been like, another 10 or 15 other examples, which kind of, like in terms of idea, in the first part of the process, we just, you try to lodge your idea with UniQuest. So I would say I'm sure we've had at least 30 idea registrations, underpinning that. So it's like it's a pyramid, and I guess there's a time factor. I guess we're still in progress. So some of these things may get through in the coming years as well. But yeah, I don't know. I think it is quite hard, I would say, to get new metallurgical technologies implemented globally. So there's probably not that many examples in the whole world. So I guess having one is is better than zero. I don't know. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
So the last online question, if there are no other questions from others, can I ask one more? It's coming from my end over. Do you perceive any barriers from industry to working with the companies that come from the investing commercialization people?
Do I see any barriers
from industry working with companies that come from the investing commercialization people? I think, do you perceive barriers from, say, industry working with UniQuest and any company that will come out of that? Knowing
any
that, say, the
barriers?
IP issues, I don't know.
Yeah, I'm a little bit fuzzy on the question, but yeah, I guess UniQuest has a process to also evaluate the companies and try to make sure that they're not making unnecessary interactions which take time and energy. So I think there's so UniQuest tries to, yeah, they do work to try to find the right type of industry supporters and investors that you can work with. So but anyway, I don't fully really understand the question. Sorry.
All right, please join me again to thank James.
All right. Okay. Thanks. Okay, great.
Next week, I think we have an SMI event, so there's a break in, and then we'll come back the week after. So join us in 2 weeks. Thank you.